And now may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. I'm not going to try to embarrass anyone this morning by asking for a show of hands, but I would be interested to know how many of you believe that there is intelligent life on other planets outside of Earth. If you do believe in that, you are not alone. No pun intended there. Recent surveys suggest 65%, almost two-thirds of all people, believe that somewhere in this universe there is intelligent life outside our own solar system. You could see some of these other numbers as well. 67% believe in the Loch Ness Monster. That's that famous half dinosaur, half fish, half something else, supposedly living in a lake in Scotland, and based on a very old and grainy black and white photo. Not as many people believe in Bigfoot or Sasquatch or Yeti or whatever you want to call them. Only 13%, but still, that's some people anyway. And I guess we should take heart in the fact that as we think about these things, at least here in America, in the United States, 81% of all people still believe in God. Now that number has been going down over the past several years, but it is still higher, obviously, than these other responses. Of course, there's another side to that coin, and that is if 81% of Americans believe in God, that means that 19% do not. If 65% of all people believe in intelligent life outside of Earth, that means that 35% do not. So what we're really talking about is not just faith in something, but also the opposite side of that coin, which is doubt. Because if 81% of people believe in God, that means 19% either don't believe or have various, very serious doubts about it. It is the Sunday after the resurrection. And typically, on the second Sunday of Easter, the reading comes from John chapter 20 and centers on our good friend Thomas, one of Jesus' 12 disciples, who has come to be known as Doubting Thomas for his inability to believe in the resurrection. In other words, because of his doubt. That Thomas, not being with the other disciples when Jesus first appeared, when they came and told him that Jesus was alive, he said, no, I'm not going to believe that. I'm not going to believe it until I can put my finger in his side and in his holes in his hands, and I can see for myself. And for this, Thomas now, throughout the centuries, has had to live with the name Doubting Thomas. But is that fair? Is that fair to paint Thomas that way? Because there's a lot of people who doubt. And that's what we want to think about today. We want to think about this idea of doubt, not just in the sense of Thomas, but in our own lives as well. And see what we can come to, not just to rehabilitate Thomas's image, but to find out what the role of faith and doubt is, more importantly, in our own lives as we live them today. We will start with the idea that it seems like most people want to believe in something greater than themselves. Most people want to believe in a higher power or greater power above and beyond and outside of themselves. Even though the number of people who believe in God has gone down, 81%, 8 out of 10, still believe in this idea. There is that part of us that wants to believe that we are not alone, that there is something bigger, something greater than ourselves. I think part of that is just due to the fact of the mess we've made of the world, that we look around and see a broken world full of disappointment and heartache and trouble, and we think there's got to be something bigger. There's got to be something greater than us. This is the kind of spiritualism, I suppose you'd call it, that has evolved over the centuries. It's the direct opposite of humanism. Humanism says that man is the ultimate creation. He is the ultimate being in the universe. That there is no greater creation, no greater living force than man. But whatever people believe in, I think they, for the most part, reject that idea. They want to believe in something bigger than themselves. The question then becomes, what do they believe in, and why should they believe? The second point we need to make about this is the fact that whatever we believe in, and for us, of course, that is the God of the Bible, but whatever we believe in, all of us have doubt. All of us have doubt. No matter what you believe in, there's always an element of doubt involved. And it can be, quite frankly, anything as you go about your daily life. As you drive on the interstate to get to Indianapolis, am I going to get there safely? Is my car going to break down? Am I going to have to pull over and fix it? Will I be in an accident? There's always that element of doubt in almost anything we believe in, and that includes the bigger picture of our faith. So I don't want anyone to feel bad for doubting at various points in your life, because doubt is simply part of who we are. If you think about the story in Matthew 14 of Jesus walking on the water, remember, he calls Peter from the boat to come out. Peter says, "Lord, if that's you, call me out." Jesus calls him out. "Come on out, Peter." And so Peter runs out onto the water, and what happens? He begins to doubt, and he begins to sink. So Jesus has to reach in and grab him by the hand and get him back in the boat and say to him, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Even Peter had his doubts, as did all the great figures of the Bible. At some time in their lives or another, they were filled with doubt. It's not just Thomas. Abraham, for all his faith, and remember, Abraham was a man who was willing to sacrifice his own son because God called him to do it. Went so far as to raise the knife above Isaac. This same Abraham, when God came to him and Sarah and told them they would have a child in their own age, they doubted. She laughed in God's face. And they went about to have a child, or try to have a child on their own, through Sarah's servant, Hagar, with disastrous results. So those times in your life when you feel doubt, when you feel like there is something missing, something's not right, when you feel like Thomas, it just can't be the way it's supposed to be, take heart, because others have gone before you, and they too have doubted, and they too have overcome their doubt. The third point we need to make here is that seeing is not always believing. Seeing is not always believing. We have said quite the opposite, haven't we? Oh, just show me. If I see it, I'll believe it. That's what Thomas did. I just want to see it. If I see it, I'll believe it. But then again, seeing is not always believing. It doesn't fix everything. For example, think about the story we see of the resurrection in Mark. Now, all of the resurrection stories in the Gospels are just slightly different. They all have the same theme, of course, but they're told by different people, and they have a few different details. But in the account of Mark, it's the women who go to the tomb and see the tomb empty and are then told that he is not here. He has risen, as he said. They're a bit incredulous about this. So, unlike the other Gospels, there's no disciples there. So they run to go tell the other disciples everything that happened. And what do we read in Mark 16:11? After the women had gone to the tomb, seen it empty, heard from the angel, report back to the disciples, we read, they did not believe it. They didn't believe it, even though they had eyewitness testimony about it. They still did not believe. We put sometimes way too much emphasis on seeing in terms of our faith and in terms of the way we interpret the world. We know, and have talked about this before, that sometimes our eyes and our brain can play tricks on us. That what we appear to see is not actually what we do see, and sometimes what we don't see is the actual reality. Our senses are important. Yes, of course they are. But seeing is not the be-all and the end-all. And faith is based on more than simply what we see or what our senses experience. And then the last point we need to bring up is the idea that even in the midst of all this doubt, uncertainty that we have, especially in our faith, Jesus is the one who bridges the gap between faith and doubt. As a matter of fact, he is the only one that can bridge the gap between faith and doubt. Our senses can't always do it. Our sight can't always do it because, as we've said, sometimes we cannot believe what we see. It's not necessarily others that do that. We can tell people about Jesus. We can share our experiences of Jesus, and we are called to do that. But that in and of itself does not bring people to faith and does not eliminate doubt in people's lives. The only thing that can bridge the gap between faith and doubt is Jesus Christ. There's a wonderful story in Mark chapter 9 about a man bringing his demon-possessed son to Jesus for healing. And the man has heard about Jesus and what he can do, and so almost out of desperation, he brings the son to see if healing can be accomplished. So he comes to Jesus and says, "If you can do anything, please have pity on us." And Jesus, you kind of can read in the words there, he's almost somewhat indignant. "If I can," he said, "anything is possible for one who believes." And then we get that wonderful statement from the Father in Mark 9:24. "I do believe," he says. "Help my unbelief." And Jesus then heals the boy and removes the demon. "I do believe. Help my unbelief." Does that not describe all of us? I do believe, Lord. I do believe. That's why I'm here this morning. I do believe. But I still have that part of me like Thomas that doubts, that is unsure, that is uncertain. The world keeps telling me what a fool I am to believe. I see things in the world that make me doubt whether God is truly at work or not. I do believe, but I want to believe more. Jesus, help my unbelief. Not, hey, you over there, you help my unbelief, or my own eyes, what I'm seeing, let them help my unbelief, or let me go read a story about faith, but Jesus, I believe, help my unbelief. Do you doubt? Do you doubt in your life? I think if we're honest with ourselves, we would say absolutely we do. Absolutely. As we look at the world, as we look at our own lives. Lord, I've been a good, faithful Christian. I've tried to do things the right way. I've tried to live the way you've wanted me to, and yet look at all the disappointment in my life. The hurt, the heartache, the sickness, the sorrow, the grief. Lord, where are you? I want to believe. Where are you? And if you do believe, what exactly is it that you believe in? What is it you'd be willing to put your life on the line for in terms of your belief? Is it that there's intelligent life in other places? That there's a Loch Ness monster? That there's a Bigfoot? There's no reason to believe in any of those things. They may or may not exist. I don't know. But there certainly is no reason to put our faith and hope and trust in that. There is every reason to believe in Jesus. Every reason to believe. Not because of what our eyes see or our ears hear or the things we experience. It says that quite clearly in our reading from 1 Peter this morning. Even though you can't see him, you love him. How is that possible? I can't see Bigfoot. I can't see the Loch Ness monster. I can't see signs of intelligent life anywhere else. But Jesus himself has bridged that gap. between faith and doubt. He is the one that's closed the door to uncertainty. Not because of anything I did, because of my faith, because of my strength, but because of who He is and what He has done and what He continues to do in my life. Thomas has gotten a bad rap and a bad reputation. And we are probably more like Thomas than we would care to believe. But as we stand here, still celebrating the resurrection, we say with Thomas and with so many others who have doubted, Lord, I do believe. Help my unbelief. Amen.